Sorry that I haven't uploaded in a while. It's just because I've got done with vacation last week and then I had to catch up on school and everything. But now I'm back. I am going to be catching up on a lot of movies and TV shows that I missed out on. I don't know when those will come out, but hopefully I can get them to you on sometime on Sunday through Tuesday. But I'm back, so let's talk about Dune.
Are you afraid of the dark? Are you scared? You know, I am you.
Dune is finally here, and I actually can't believe it. It feels like only yesterday that the first trailer came out for this movie, and now we're here seeing it. This review will include some minor spoilers. I won't go into specifics because honestly, this movie is just part one of the first book. In the first book, there's not a whole lot that happens, but if you don't want to know anything going in, just spoiler warning, go watch the movie and then come back. To give you a brief summary of what position I am in the Dune universe, I read the book when the trailer came out and now I'm rereading it. So it was pretty easy to follow this movie. So what did I think about this movie? And well, to sum it all up, this is my favorite movie of the year so far. Pretty much everything about this movie is great on some level. This movie gave me pretty much everything I wanted from it and a lot more. I have two minor problems with this movie that kind of set it back, and I'll talk about those later, but let's start off with the good. First, I want to talk about the story. The story in here is really great. There's not a whole lot of a story in here because this is pretty much setting up the inevitable part 2 if that ever comes out. But the small story that they do give you in here is great. You are easily transported into this world through the story, and you're invested pretty much throughout the entire runtime of the film. Let's talk about the action. Like the story, there isn't a whole lot of action in here, but the action that they do give you is pretty great. It's not like the most memorable fight scenes ever, and it's certainly not on like a giant level of MCU type fighting, but it's still pretty good, and they give you enough action and suspenseful moments to keep you interested in the story, even though I'd say about 3/4 of this film is talking about Arrakis and everything. And my only problem with the action overall is that they're too short. There's a lot of build up to these scenes, especially if you've read the books. It doesn't entirely satisfy you because they seem like they're rushing the action scenes a bit. But for the most part, it's pretty great. Next, let's talk about the sound design. It's really great. There's a lot of sound in here that doesn't sound like anything you've heard in a movie before. And a lot of it is satisfying, especially when you see the scenes play out and hear the effects in the background. It's really cool. My only real problem with the sound effects is there's this one thing that they do a couple times is where they'll fade all the audio out and then have this like distorted voice talking. It just felt a little weird to me and I didn't really like that part. But overall, the sound design is great and it's worth the ticket price. Let's talk about the visuals. On a visual perspective, this movie is absolutely mind-blowing from start to finish. There is not a single bad looking scene. There are a couple that look a little too dark, but even then they look beautiful. There's not a whole lot of color. It's pretty much limited to like brown, blue, black, and yellow, but they make really good uses of those colors to make it not seem repetitive. The one scene in the design is that stuck out to me is like the sort of vision where Paul meets Channy, and she's like bringing him into this like cave or something, and then she cuts his arm. That was really beautiful, and it had a lot of yellow to it. It made the actors and the backgrounds jump out of the screen. Next, let's talk about the world building. The world building in here is great. It might be one of the best elements of the movie, and believe me, there are a lot of good things in here. Denis Villeneuve took every single opportunity to expand the world of Dune in this first movie. There are a lot of sets that immerse you into the world, and they don't need a big explanation as to why they exist. For example, there's like this big informational projector that tells everyone what they need to know about the Fremen and Arrakis, and you don't need a single scene to set it up. You just go with the flow and don't look back. So overall, the world building is phenomenal, and like the first 15 minutes you will be like completely immersed into this film. Let's talk about the cast. Everyone in here is great. Timothée Chalamet is Paul, and he's wonderful. At first, like for the first half, he wasn't phenomenal, but he was really great, and he really felt like the definitive Paul Atreides. But there's this one scene where they're like in a tent, and Paul just yells at his mom because he believes that she made him the way he is, and it just really sold me on Timothée Chalamet's performance. Rebecca Ferguson is also great as Lady Jessica. She's not in here a whole lot. I'd say she's in about 20-25 minutes, but she's really great in here. She's not like a standout in this movie, but there's so many people in here that are standouts that it doesn't really matter. Oscar Isaac is really good as Duke Leto. He's kind of one of the weaker people in here, but I think it's because that Duke Leto wasn't in the book that much, so Oscar Isaac wasn't really utilized as his full point. Stellan Skarsgård is great as Baron Harkonnen. He's also not in here that much. He's probably like the person that is in here the main character that is in here the least, but he's really great in here. He really sold me as Baron Harkonnen. Even though the books didn't go into a whole lot of description in here, I felt like the definitive Baron Harkonnen because he's just really disgusting. He's like really fat, and he eats really sloppy, and it really shows you how messy this guy is. Zendaya is also really great in here. I can't fully judge her on her performance in here because she's only in it like for 10 minutes, I'd say. But for those 10 minutes, she did a really good job. But again, I can't really judge her on her character quite yet, and I'll have to see what she gives in Dune Part 2. And everyone else in here is just really good. Jason Momoa, Dave Bautista, and so many more just absolutely knock it out of the park. I have two problems in here, and they're kind of just like one, but it's for different reasons, and that is the pacing. Now, for the most part, the pacing is actually really good. This movie is 2 hours and 35 minutes, but it honestly feels like one of the shorter Marvel movies, like 2 hours or something. But there's also these pretty slow scenes for like 10 or 15 minutes of the movie that are pretty boring. And yes, I know that Dune has a lot of lore to it, and you need to slow down to take time and explore the world. But I feel like that they could have trimmed those scenes down a couple minutes to make the pacing better. Also, with the pacing comes some things feel rushed. It feels like they didn't want to go over 2.5 hours, so they kind of rushed through stuff. Like for the first 15 minutes, the setup is pretty fast moving, and you don't really know what's happening at first. They do explain it, but it does feel like an issue. And also, the big moments that feel like payoff didn't feel like payoff because they just really move fast. And also the ending. The ending was okay, but when you watch it, it feels like it kind of just makes makes the movie as a whole like filler, because when you get to the ending, you don't feel like much happened, and this is just a setup for the second one, which it is. But I feel like they could have kept it going a couple minutes longer, like make it 2 hours and 45 minutes. So then, and then have a proper ending. Overall, Dune is nothing short of a masterpiece. You really need to see this movie as soon as possible. I don't really know if I would recommend the theaters, even though everyone is saying that you have to see it on the theater. If you don't really want to pay for that and just have HBO Max, watch it on there, because no matter what device, what like screen you watch it on, whether it's a theater room, TV, phone, iPad, whatever, it still sounds and looks beautiful. And unfortunately, the minor criticisms I have of this film kept me from giving this the perfect score. But in the end, I'm going to give Dune a very positive 9 out of 10. Guys, thanks so much for watching, and sorry for the almost 3-week break from movie reviews. But I will be back soon with a lot more as soon as I can figure out when to film them. So stay tuned for those. You can check out my other channels linked down in the description, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!